Hello, everyone. Welcome to Need to Know Marketing. My name is Mark Fidelman. Joining me is Gil Ayal, CEO of Hyper. Gil, we're going to talk today about what level of influencer is best for the audience watching today. So let's let you kind of introduce what article and what study we're talking about, and then we'll either riddle it full of holes or agree with it. So there's a WhoSay survey that was done, and Gil, kind of fill in the blanks for me.
Yeah, so the story is really where do you get the best bang for your buck when working with influencers? Is it about finding that enormous influencer that has a huge diverse audience, or is it about finding smaller micro influencers? And according to this article, which is kind of contrary to the popular belief, the most success was found with tier 2 and tier 3 influencers, which would be kind of the smaller celebrities or the big YouTubers, people with like 800,000 to a million followers. They tended to have the best engagement and the best return on investment, according to the article.
Yeah, and from my point of view, I don't like the fact they have 5 tiers of influencers. That just makes it way too confusing. But I think they're saying that really high level or pretty powerful influencers, tier 1, tier 2s that have 2 million or more followers, had the best average cost per post, and then the average cost per 1,000 impressions, you're better off with somebody that averages around 850,000 influencers. And I don't know where they're getting the research from. I don't think it goes into what the research was, but I would dispute those figures just from personal experience in our company's experience on several levels. Let's start with average cost per post. Now, average cost per post for them, I believe, meant, if somebody's going to do a post on Instagram or Twitter or someplace like that, I don't think they're talking about videos here. The average cost per post for a tier 2 is the highest for somebody with 2.8 million followers as opposed to somebody with 5 million followers. And then tier 3 is slightly behind them with at average price per post of $25,000. Is that the way you read it as well?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you start dropping precipitously with micro influencers with an average of 8,400 or even 1,500. Now, I've done several micro influencer campaigns where they're way below even 1,500. Sometimes you can get it for $200 on Instagram. So I'm not even sure where they're coming up with these figures. Maybe where they're adding in their own commission. I don't know.
Well, I think you have to look at who's participating in this, and WhoSay's main strength is working with celebrities and kind of larger influencers, so this story makes sense for them. But for me, it's a different story. It's really a question of not just how much engagement you're getting, but what kind of engagement are you getting. Not every 500 likes are the same as another 500 likes. And the question is, do you really hit the right audience? With smaller influencers, you have a better chance of hitting a uniform audience that might be interested in your product. If you're selling, something for cooking or something for beauty, and you pick a beauty influencer or a food influencer, they're likely to have an audience that's really interested in it. If you go really big, if you go to the musicians, if you go to the professional athletes, you're getting a really diverse audience. So yes, you might get more engagement, you might get more likes, perhaps even at a better price. I don't know, that doesn't really make much sense to me. But what's the value of that engagement? Is it equivalent to the engagement of an audience that's really uniform and really cares?
Yeah, let's move now to average cost per 1,000 impressions. They're telling us that the average of tier 3, which they mean is 850,000 followers or more, the average cost per 1,000 impressions is best. You get the best deal with somebody around 850,000 followers. Now, again, followers does not mean that you can't translate that directly into impressions. And even impressions for me is kind of a BS metric. It really comes down to views and engagement on those views. But they're using impressions, and they think that somebody at 850,000 followers is got the best impressions. And I say it really depends. It depends on the industry. It depends on the influencer. I mean, I've known influencers with 100,000 followers that every time they put out content, they get a huge amount of views and thus impressions when they start socializing that within their community. So the data to me is I'd like to see the mean data, not the average data, just to see where it's all clumping up. But just take this whole research with a grain of salt, because if you cannot you cannot use this as if it's the Bible, because it just depends on so many different factors. I'm not even sure why they publish this, because it can be torn apart in several different ways.
Yeah, I mean, the data that we have, and we collect tens of thousands of posts that we track every week, basically every disclosed post, definitely shows a very obvious graph. The smaller the influencer, the more likely they are to have a higher level of engagement in percentage points, not in numbers, of course. And again, it really depends. If you're representing micro influencers, if you're an agency that works that way, you're going to want to tell that story. This is a Wild West, and I think WhoSay is very good at what they do, and that story fits their narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say influencer beware, and I'd say buyer beware here, because don't take this as anything more than just an average and then a perspective from WhoSay. From their perspective, this might be entirely accurate, and this is how they're going to market. I will tell you, though, from personal experience, it varies, and it varies on a lot of different factors. So getting something very specific to you, now don't take this average, but something very specific to your brand, your product, your industry is the critical thing. So what we do is we kind of offer this, what we call this one-time diagnostic, where we'll go tell you who the top influencers are and what to expect in your industry. And it might not be a tier 3, it might be a tier 1, it might be a bunch of micro influencers. Every situation is different. You can't just go to the bank on data like this. What's your thoughts, Gil?
I agree 100%. I think it really comes down to the strength of the influencer's relationship with their audience. Typically smaller audiences, and typically connections that are really uniform, talking about a specific subject, owning a specific niche, will perform better than really, really broad networks. But again, it does come down to a case-by-case basis.
Okay. And, one of the places that we look is Hyper. So in wrapping this up, Gil, where can people reach you?
I'm Gil at hyperbrands.com, hyperbrands.com.
Okay. Fantastic platform. You got to check it out. Links are in the profile. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please look in the comments, whether you're watching this on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. Let us know what you think about it. Let us know your experience. We'll love to hear it. And thanks again, Gil, for another entertaining and educational discussion, especially when it comes to influencers, because there's so much disinformation and information like this that's pretty valid, but it's all contextual and based on your unique situation.
Thanks for having me.